Now the free agency is underway, and I think a lot of the heavy lifting is done by the San Francisco 49ers. It's time to update the list of needs for the San Francisco 49ers for phase 2 of free agency and for the NFL draft. Coming up on today's episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Croc's been doing a lot of liftings, little swole, little sore over there. If you're watching this on the live YouTube here, you can tell, man, Croc's been putting in the work. We appreciate you, everybody that's watching us every day, making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Nissan and the new Nissan Ariya. You got to check out the new vehicle, the new EV from Nissan, the 2023 Nissan Ariya, all new, all electric, the EV for people who love to drive. Learn more at nissanusa.com. All right. So, Croc, as it pertains to the San Francisco 49ers free agents here and what the 49ers have done, I don't think we have to completely go through. Oh, here we go. Aponte in the chat. There's a bracket. There's a bracket out there that I think Rob Guerrero put out for 49ers media members. And man, got Croc and I facing off in the first round of the 49ers media bracket. That's a rough pull. Thanks, Aponte, for pointing that one out. That's a tough one for our listeners, man. And look, and it just means, Croc, to be honest with you, I think we should have been you're one seed in the South, clearly. I'm like, I don't know, way down the list of seeds in the West. But we should have been separate regionals, so we had an opportunity to battle potentially in the championship game. But now that's not going to happen.
I think we should have been one. I feel like you don't get Peacock without Croc. You don't get Croc without Peacock. They should have just put Croc, and that's I think right. That would have worked better. I don't like battling against my co-host.
I don't either, but an easy path to the Elite Eight for either one of us that get through round one, in my opinion. I haven't really looked at who else is on the list. I just saw that and thought it was funny that Croc and I are battling in the bracket in the opening round. That's like Marquette versus Gonzaga. Let's see. So
did you do it real quick? Did you do a bracket?
I used to do one every single year, like multiple. I'd have one at work. I'd have one with this group of friends, have one with some people over here. And I just, like, pandemic crushed a lot of stuff for me. I'm in so many fewer fantasy leagues. So I don't even do a bracket. I don't think I did a bracket last year. Didn't do a bracket this year. I was kind of surprised because I knew it was coming. I didn't know the games were starting today. And I was like, oh, here we go. The tournament's on. Okay. Because I might have done a bracket, but I needed like a couple extra days because I wasn't even prepared for it to start today. That's how out of the loop I am. I'm so locked into, look, and this happens every year with me, Croc, too. And I talk about it during draft season. I fill my head with 250 new names, and this dome does not have a lot of space in it. So that means I got to remove other stuff, and things like fantasy baseball starts to get erased, baseball prospects and old phone numbers and old friends and things that my wife told me I'm supposed to do next week. Just like a new draft prospect comes in the dome, something else has to leave to make room for it.
Yeah, my wife made me put together a bracket for her, and I'm like, babe, I don't do brackets. Like, I just never have. So I finally did one today. And what do you know? Virginia goes down first round. Your bracket's done. It's over.
Fantastic stuff. It's look, when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers, Croc, and the work that's been done so far this offseason, how do you feel right now? Because look, because in the title I put updated roster needs for the San Francisco 49ers post free agency. I feel like free agency is kind of over almost. Do you get that vibe from the 49ers? We're one day into the new league year. I don't think the 49ers fans out there should expect a lot more in free agency.
I think first and foremost, you got to identify what is free agency for. And I was actually in the space for the first time in a long time, maybe since football season. And, there was a guy, shout out to my guy, Sersky, but he was a little upset because the 49ers weren't making splashier moves. And I'm like, dude, the splashy moves aren't for a team like the 49ers. The 49ers only have so many kind of voids that they truly need to fill and maybe like upgrade at, right? Maybe you could say offensive tackle, and I know we'll get to that, but I really like what they've done so far because now you look on paper, right? And of course, paper, you don't play the games on paper, you play the games in person. But if you look on paper, this team is pretty good. I mean, and with the one move with Hargraves and what that did to the defense, adding now Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Hargraves, and then whoever else is the edge on the other side. Hopefully it's Drake Jackson, but you got some other guys that you brought back. I like the depth that they have on the defensive line with Givens. You went out and you got the kid out of Clemson from the former first round pick by the fourth overall pick by the Raiders to play at defensive end as well. You got Jordan Willis back. You just got some guys where it's like, okay, we got some depth. Then you get to the next level. You still have probably the best linebacker tandem in the NFL. You got an all-pro at safety in Talanoa Hufanga. You got Gibson. He's a takeaway machine. You got Javarius Ward. He's pretty damn good at the cornerback position. And then it's like, do you want like a superstar at every single position? I think so far what they've done in free agency, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which is what they hang their hat on, I think that this team is in a really good place. Now, are they better? We'll see. When you lose Amenahu and you lose Ebukam, I mean, those are big losses, right? Just because of you knew what you were getting from them. Not high volume sack guys, not world beaters, but they were just good football players. I think that's what makes the 49ers go. Now you got to figure out like, hey, who's going to be that like those two good football players that we replace those guys with. But overall, I think the 49ers are in a really good spot after that first weekend free agency.
I think so too. A lot of changeover, a lot more changeover than I expected, and a lot more players going out than coming in. But I think we expected the 49ers to lose a lot of free agents. Jimmy Garoppolo's not a surprise. Mike McGlinchey's not much of a surprise. The fact that they brought in someone like Javon Hargrave, it's not a surprise they weren't able to bring in Ebukam and Amenahu after that. But there's a lot of changeover, and defensive line I think is better. I think the defensive line is better, and defensive tackle specifically, I think they're kind of done. That was one of our biggest needs. That was, I think, the second pick in our mock draft that we did last week, pre-free agency, Croc. I had the 49ers going with a defensive tackle with that second pick in the third round. And I think D tackle's just about done. It's a pretty full room already. T.Y. McGill, the latest signing by the 49ers, a 1-year contract. It's not going to be for a lot of money. And I think that was a great move. I loved what I saw from T.Y. McGill in limited action this year when the 49ers brought him off the scrap heap, really, and signed him off the practice squad of the Minnesota Vikings. He looked good against the Niners on the Minnesota Vikings in the preseason. And then the 49ers brought him in, and, he played a nice little reserve role. So looking at defensive tackle now with Hargrave that they brought in to go already with Eric Armstead, longest tenured San Francisco 49er now. Both those guys around 30 years old. I think Hargrave was in the draft class right before Armstead, if I'm not mistaken. So Armstead, I think, is a year younger. So they're 29 and 30 years old or something like that. So, veterans on the 49ers defensive line. And then Nick Bosa at defensive end to go with whoever starts on the other side. If it's Drake Jackson or Clelin Ferrell on early downs, then Drake Jackson comes in. But Drake Jackson has a great opportunity there. I think the D-line has the opportunity to be even better than it was before. A little bit worried about the secondary. We'll get to the secondary in a second, even after the Isaiah Oliver signing. But that does help. But back to the defensive tackles here. So you've got Hargrave, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw still around, T.Y. McGill added back to the list. Kevin Givens was re-signed. So that's 5 right there. They've got Kalia Davis, who was a redshirt rookie last year. That's 6 defensive tackles. You only usually break camp with 10 defensive linemen. So that doesn't leave much room for much else. And when you've got already 3 really solidified defensive ends, maybe there's one more space for a defensive lineman, if everybody stays healthy throughout camp, which you never know what's going to happen there. But I think the shopping at defensive tackle is pretty well done. They've got a deep group there now.
Yeah, really deep. And I think that's where they want to kind of hang their hat on. We kind of poked the fun at Kyle Shanahan. I don't even want to say fun. I guess I was a little kind of frustrated early on with the offense and lack of production, lack of offense. And it's like Kyle Shanahan just felt like he was very passive on the offense side of the ball and kind of made it to where, hey, defense, you have to go out and win the games, right? And that's what it looked like early on. And I think right now they're kind of gearing up for the defense to be able to carry them if need be. Like that's what they're trying to do, if need be. Now, we saw it down the stretch, especially when Brock Purdy was in that quarterback, we saw a big time increase in points per game. I think it was averaging 34 points a game. Like that was amazing. So if 49ers can get that kind of production out of the offense whenever Brock Purdy comes back or whoever's at quarterback, that would definitely be beneficial. But right now, it looks like that defensive line, if healthy, is going to be pretty dang good.
So defensive tackle is a need that I think you can take away. You can take it off the list. Yeah. It doesn't mean that they won't draft one defensive tackle with the number of draft picks that the 49ers have. We don't know what Khalil Davis is yet. Maybe he's a guy who never really impacts. He's a 6th round pick. So he wasn't an early pick or anything like that. He had a redshirt year. We'll see what kind of player he turns out to be. Javon Kinlaw is clearly not in the long-term plans after they signed Javon Hargrave, is even in the short-term plans. Do they trade him before the season even starts, before the draft potentially? So I don't know what's going on with Javon Kinlaw necessarily, but clearly he's at best the number 3 tackle on the 49ers going into the season. So there could be some changes there, but defensive tackle was a big need. That need has been mostly erased. I'm looking at center. The 49ers bringing back Jake Brendel. That's a big one. I think some offensive line needs are still there. Obviously, offensive tackle would be a need after losing Mike McGlinchey in free agency and probably becomes need number 1. Would you fight me, Croc, if I said need number 1, offensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers, not only immediate need potentially at right tackle to compete with Colton McKivitz and whoever else gets an opportunity, Jalen Moore, and maybe even Burford has an opportunity to move out to tackle. But then, we might only have 1 year left of Trent Williams. Who knows how long? That could be a couple years. It could be 1 year. Maybe the 49ers know. Maybe they don't know yet what his intentions are for the rest of his career. Maybe Trent Williams himself doesn't know yet. But he contemplated it, at least retirement this offseason. So we know that's at some point on the horizon for Trent Williams. So offensive tackle is obviously a need for the 49ers, and I'd probably have to put that at 1. And I think it was we projected it to be the top need with Mike McGlinchey leaving, and I think it still is for the 49ers.
That's got to be the biggest need because that's the one position, right? We just talked a lot about defense, and you can kind of hide guys or put them in positions consistently to where it's like, hey, they do well with doing this, right? I think we talked about that yesterday. Put guys in positions to be successful. Well, at the offensive tackle position, you can't hide. And the only way to really help you is to take away from other parts of your offense with guys like George Kittle, leaving him in the block, and the 49ers have kind of done that from time to time. So you got a right tackle issue or kind of a hole in your offense there. It kind of limits, some of these you could do, how you have to drop back and pass, having to leave extra protection in there just to get off a pass. What does that do for defenses? Does it hurt them? You'll have less guys out for passes. I mean, all those things really affects you. So you got to hammer home that right tackle position and make sure you have a guy that you're confident that you could just run an offense with, especially for a team that wants to do so much play action. You can't do play action, turn your back to a defense, and then next thing you know, your right tackle just gets whooped, and then your quarterback turns around. And what happens? Kind of what it looked like in the Eagles game, right? Not even just the Brock Purdy one when they try to leave in Tyler Kroft to block the edge rusher, but when I'm blanking on his name right now, kid out of Temple, drafted by Arizona, edge rusher.
Reddick.
Hassan Reddick. So Hassan Reddick, when Josh Johnson, play action, turns around, next thing he knows, Reddick is right there taking the ball away from him as he's taking him to the ground. I mean, so you have to have somebody to be able to protect that right tackle. Everybody always talks about left tackle and how important that is. I think right tackle is equally as important now.
So current need at right tackle, maybe future need at right tackle, maybe future need at left tackle. I think left tackle clearly need number 1 for the San Francisco 49ers right now going forward. Even if they do have a plan with current players to compete at those spots and feel like they're covered this year, it's a future need as well. And sometimes players, as we know in the NFL draft, you draft them for years in the future, not necessarily for their rookie years, especially when you're talking about the 49ers not having to pick until the 3rd round. It's hard to project those guys into day 1 starters. Next, what do the rest of the needs look like for the 49ers? Tight end, back up to, I've seen this in the chat already today, back up to, it's a good tight end class, back up to George Kittle, potentially needed for the San Francisco 49ers. They're clearly shopping there, I think, based on some of the meetings they've had with prospects so far. Linebacker, defensive end, defensive back, corner, safety. What do the 49ers need most now that we've seen the beginning and maybe even possibly most of the end of free agency in 2023? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Built Bar March, Built Bar March Madness. And the bracket is here. It's bracket mania right now, man. And we know you have a favorite bar or puff. If you listen to this podcast and you've purchased Built Bars, I'm sure you have a favorite. I have my favorite. It's peanut butter. Croc's got his favorite, which is in the puff family. And now it's your time to make it count. Go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built Bars. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. You got to try Built. Built are the best protein bars ever. Seriously, they're so amazing. You won't think they're good for you, but they are. Healthy is tasty with Built Bars. And what makes Built Bars and Built Puffs so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, but high protein, low sugar, low calories. That is the combination you are looking for. So run to builtmarchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. All right, Croc. I want you to talk for a second about how you feel about the defensive backfield now. With the loss of Jimmy Ward, the loss of Isaiah Oliver, I would argue that DB, whether it be corner or safety,
the loss of Emmanuel Mosley.
Emmanuel Mosley is a loss, and I think it's a big loss. And the time change is killing me now with this recording. The sun's blasting me right now, so I gotta go close the blinds while you speak on the DBs, and tell me if you think maybe even the number 2 need still for the 49ers is somewhere in the defensive backfield.
I think the thing that I'm going to be most interested to see is how much confidence the San Francisco 49ers have in Diamador Lenore being the legit starter from day one, right? Like heading into OTAs, heading into training camp, heading into the regular season week 1, our guy is Diamador Lenore. We watched Diamador Lenore's play. It had been up and down just a little bit. I thought he played well as a reserve man, and that's how I viewed Diamador Lenore. I viewed him through the eyes of this was not your planned starter to begin the season. It was Emmanuel Mosley and Travarius Ward. So once Diamador Lenore got in, for me, it was more so a bonus if he played well. And I thought he played well, and then something started not going his way against the Washington Commanders. He got bombed on a few times. I think one got called back. He didn't play great against the Las Vegas Raiders, right? But then postseason comes and you see Diamador Lenore have multiple takeaways in the postseason. So how do they view him? Is he a day one starter, or, hey, we love him as our CB3, but we're still hopefully trying to identify that legit starter on the outside? Because that's what Mosley was. That's what Ward is. Now, as far as the safety position, Hufanga has to be better with his eye discipline. I think if I'm worried about anything with the back end, I think Gibson's going to be Gibson. He did a great job. Hufanga, I love the big playability, and I don't want to take away from him being aggressive, but he has to get better with his eyes in coverage, and eye discipline, because that's what gets him beat. It's not a lack of ability, which I thought it would be heading into the NFL. Didn't think he was the fastest guy or the quick-footed, most athletic guy, but, man, he's a heady guy. Plays a step ahead because of the mental aspect of his game, but that seemed to lack a little bit down the stretch. Now, were teams doing things to get him in the bind? They saw some 10s and they went to attack that. That could be the case, but nonetheless, some of the things down the stretch were a little worrisome, even between Hufanga and Diamador Lenore. I think both turned it around a bit in the playoffs, though.
And I think the 49ers feel pretty good about those guys, and I think they've told us so over the course of the last 12 months. How they feel about Hufanga and Diamador Lenore. But even penciling those guys in, I would say backup long-term safety. Tashawn Gibson's on a 1-year deal. So developing a starting safety in the future, that you could draft that player in 2024, maybe if Tashawn Gibson retires, but you still need some depth now. You might want to get in front of that need. Draft a guy now for later, just like they did with Hufanga in the 5th round. So I think safety is clearly a need. And I think corner is still a need. A question for me, Croc, is where Oliver is going to line up. If he played his best as a slot. So if you got Womack battling with Oliver in the slot, and both of them can maybe provide some depth outside, maybe outside corner is more of a need for depth. If you feel good and you're done in the slot, is Oliver sort of a jack of all trades where maybe he'll even play some safety, play some slot, play some outside corner. And then then to me, it's just like DB is the need. So is it corner? Is it safety? Or is it just best defensive back available at some point in the draft if the guy's there?
It sounds like he'd be best defensive back available.
Yeah. I feel the same way. So for me right now, that might be 2. Would you put the need for maybe an edge rusher ahead of a defensive back then after offensive tackle?
I'm always going to go edge, right? Now, is it a bigger need? Again, I believe strongly in player development. And when you look at Jackson, I'm going to probably go back to this throughout the offseason. Everybody's going to be clamoring to go get a guy, Jadeveon Clowney, right? And I look at Clowney, what does that do to the development of Drake Jackson? Because it's going to take snaps away from him, having a guy like Clowney out there. So I would hope that with more playing time, with a legit offseason, Drake Jackson can be the guy that everybody wants to be, that edge rushing guy, and it won't be a need. But if you, let's say, hypothetically speaking, man, he comes back from, off season, he looks the same, plays the same, strength is the same, and it's like, he can play, but maybe he's going to be just a rotation piece, then I'd always lean defensive line, especially edge rusher, over secondary.
All right, next, we got to hash out the rest of it. I think linebacker is in there. Tight end is in there. How could this look for the 49ers attacking their needs the rest of the way? Could there still be a veteran, a name that we all recognize, an NFL household name that could be joining the San Francisco 49ers in free agency? Next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It is March Madness crazy, brackets galore. You can bet on every game. You can bet on props on every game of the NCAA tournament at FanDuel. And, of course, the NBA season getting really close to the playoffs there as well. It's a really fun time of year in the spring. Major League Baseball getting going. And it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlays. So don't miss the chance to win your no-sweat first bet or get $1,000 back in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Croc. Linebacker. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles gone. Azeez Al-Shaair is gone. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles just wasn't tendered a restricted free agent contract. They could still bring him back. It's interesting that they re-signed all of their restricted free agents rather than doing playing the tender game with those guys. So Colton McKivitt's back, and exclusive rights free agent, not restricted free agent technically, was Juwan Jennings. There was one more that I'm blanking on that the 49ers brought back as a restricted. Kevin Givens was the other. Brought back on a 2-year deal instead of extending the normal tender offer. So it's something the 49ers have done in the past and something that they like to do, and decided not to tender a restricted free agent offer to Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. So they do have some players at linebacker, but I think linebacker becomes a need as well. Dre Greenlaw has been a player who's, he's had some injuries during his career, and that is a really strong position. They've got a really strong group of 2 starters there. Who's going to be your third starter at linebacker? And do the 49ers need some competition? Offensive tackle 1, DB 2. Is linebacker 3, Croc?
It's tough because you look at some of the injuries, and Greenlaw has missed games. He has. I mean, sometimes for an extended period of time and for whatever reason. And sometimes I think you have to kind of like reel him in a little bit, sit him down, like, all right, Greenlaw, like settle down just a little bit, and then put him back out there. If he is out for a game or so, which we have seen over the last couple of years, then you are going to need a linebacker, unless you're just that confident in the ball kid. But I love what they have at linebacker. I was talking to my buddies in the group chat today. I'm like, man, the 49ers have probably the best linebacker crew in the NFL. I feel confident with saying that. And if they're not the best, I mean, top three. Because of how good Warner and Greenlaw play off of each other. I mean, they play extremely well. They both bring that fire, that tenacity on a play-to-play basis. But, obviously adding a guy won't hurt. I think they've done a really good job of identifying guys that fit. I think we said in the past, find a guy that played safety in college, right? A big guy that was maybe versatile. And then you could probably plug him in at linebacker for the 49ers, and he could do well. So they identify those guys very well. I'd say they have to add somebody, though, because they don't have any higher picks where they kind of poured those type of resources into that position. Most of these other guys have been reserve guys, even Flanagan Fowles, who did re-sign today, but even him coming back, Aziz, I mean, these were guys that, not really like drafted or anything.
I missed the DFF signing. I missed the Foles re-signing. It must have happened while I was out to an early dinner with the fam. So good on that. So Foles is back. There's no numbers yet on that one. I'm looking at the most updated list I can find. In the chat, it was asked if we have numbers yet on Isaiah Oliver's contract. It was a 2-year deal, and that has become not a thing anymore. I wonder if the Isaiah Oliver contract is up in the air, because it was a 2-year deal. Looking at Spotrac numbers here yesterday, and then now it says not available for how many years it is, and there's still no dollars to it. But we do have a dollar amount to Clelin Ferrell's 1-year contract, $2.5 million. So that's on the budget side of things for someone who could play a role for the San Francisco 49ers. So I do like the Clelin Ferrell deal, and that's close to free for a player who was drafted as highly as he was to come in and they could play a role for the 49ers, and currently the third defensive end on the team, maybe the second defensive end on the team, depending on how some things go with Drake Jackson's second year. Although I am expecting a lot out of Drake Jackson. But look, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles hasn't played a big role for the 49ers, and whatever dollar amount he was brought in for, that's the 49ers telling you that it was less than what they were going to tender him as a restricted free agent. So he's not guaranteed a roster spot. Marcelino McCrary-Ball's not guaranteed a roster spot. I think Oren Burks is probably the third linebacker that's actually got a real lock on a lost roster spot because of his special teams ability. I don't know if the 49ers just say, well, he's our third linebacker and we're good there. I would still, even with DFF coming back for the 49ers, I would still put linebacker up there and potentially still keep that as a need, that, especially with all the picks the 49ers have and how good they are at drafting and developing linebackers. They're going to pluck one in the draft at some point. Might not be round 3, but round 5, 6, 7, they're going to pull a linebacker out of this draft.
To back up just a little bit, you talked about the cornerback position and kind of maybe adding guys there. I see in the chat a lot of people throwing out the name Marcus Peters. And I think from a play style perspective, he fits. He's an off-coverage guy, terrific with his eyes, kind of being able to take calculated risk. It could burn him at times, but definitely a big play waiting to happen. Just not sure exactly which way, but he definitely takes the ball away. Why I don't think he's a fit is because of the personality. I mean, Kyle, they like certain guys, and Marcus Peters, he's a little different. And I think it takes a different type of coach to be like, oh yeah, we're good with Marcus Peters coming over here, and how he is, I'm good with that. We know how to manage that. We have this guy for that. Kyle is very no nonsense type guy. So the moment Marcus Peters does some Marcus Peters stuff, and as smart as he is, I hear he's extremely smart on the field. He knows defense, like student of the game, all that. But just his personality, I think that could clash with how Kyle is, who's more so of a control freak, and he wants you to be a very specific way. And I don't know if Kyle would let Marcus Peters just be Marcus Peters.
You know what John Lynch would say about the 49ers free agency period, Croc? I think we ain't done yet. That's what he would say about it. All these names I'm seeing in the chat, Julio Jones and Quan Alexander, some people are throwing out there as maybe the third linebacker. Marcus Peters, Justin Houston's another name I've seen. If those guys are willing to take a big discount, and maybe these are signings even in the summer post-draft, the 49ers don't really get what they want in the draft, they would have to come at such a discount. You saw what the numbers were, $2.5 million for Clelin Ferrell. That's where the 49ers are shopping right now. T.Y. McGill, I don't know what he signed for, but it's not going to be a lot of money. The 49ers are in the bargain aisle right now. That's just where they are. I would be shocked if they bring somebody in that costs more than $5 million a year. And none of these guys that have a name attached to them, they might take a short-term contract, but I just don't think it's going to be short and cheap at the same time.
We've been focusing a lot on defense. We did talk about the offensive tackle position, but there is a certain guy out there at the receiver position that is available. Not Julio Jones, but Odell Beckham. And I just saw him today post to his Instagram page, and it was like, kind of highlights. You know how they put together the film from his workout and things like that. I'm like, damn, looks like Odell. I don't know. It excites me. I'm a big fan of Odell. I mean, there was a time where it's like Odell is my favorite player in the league. I would rush home because, oh man, Odell Beckham is going to be on like that. And I don't do that for a lot of NFL players, but it's like, man, I want to watch Odell. So I know he's not that, but he looked good. I mean, he was in and out of his breaks. I mean, he looked very fluid, not stiff at all. I mean, the hands looked the same, and he was catching the ball, making moves on the air. It was good to see. So I don't know what he's going to demand. I saw something floating out there saying he wants $20 million a year. That's BS. Look, nobody that has to hold their own private workout is demanding $20 million. That's them saying, look, like I can still play, guys. So somebody just come and throw something at me. Throw a little something at me, please. But hopefully the 49ers, because I like that. I like that. Put them in the mix.
I'm not looking at the numbers right now, but what would you guess? When was the last time Odell played a full season? Like 2019?
Sure. If that. I feel like every year he like missed a game.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. The 49ers, by the way, were at his workout. They were one of, I think, 12 teams at Odell's workout, reportedly. I've only seen like 5 clips from Odell's workout, all different catches, all one hand. Did he just catch every ball with one hand during his whole workout? That's what
when you watch him again, his latest on Instagram Reels, all right, but his latest post, you see a lot more than just the one-handed catches. But those are there too, and that's hard. Yeah, I play around with these kids all the time, and I catch balls with one hand and stuff. And how he does it, I could never do that. It's like he catches like that. Like I can catch a one-hander like that. If you throw it out there and I go and catch it like this, I can do that. But he can catch it like that. Yeah, that's
this way versus this way is different.
You gotta have different type of hands to do that. Yeah, and he had 10-inch hands coming out of college, so
that's key. Real quick with the linebacker. So Follow Verdades says Deion Henley. He looks like a 49er. Maybe they are targeting him in the draft. I think he's a perfect fit out of Washington State. If there's 2 linebackers right now I'm looking at for the 49ers, it's Deion Henley from Washington State and Sac State's own Marte Mapu. Those are the 2 guys I'm looking at for the 49ers linebacker. Mid-round types of guys, undersized, fast, that prototype that the 49ers have utilized and done really well with in the draft. Keep a strength to strength, and you don't have to spend a lot on it. You got a lot of draft picks. I think 49ers are going to add some competition to that linebacker 3 area of their football team. And how about the tight end 2 area of the football team?
I think that's probably the most underrated.
Yeah, they've been kind of looking for that. They brought in 2 tight ends last year in camp, veteran guys. Croft was one of them. He's still a free agent out there, unsigned.
Jordan Reed the year before.
Yeah, the Jordan Matthews has been trying to do the conversion to tight end, then got hurt, and that's not really worked out great. They drafted, Ross Dwelly keeps just like he's almost become the offensive version of Dante Johnson, where it's like, they keep bringing in guys, and he's still like, no, I'm still the second best guy. So you got to keep trying if you're going to find someone to beat me out. Charlie Warner they brought in. He was supposed to be like, blocking specialist, try hard guy, and he's just not really taken off with the 49ers. So I don't know what to expect.
That's what they do, right? They and again, they identify guys and they get some guys that play a very specific role. But sometimes, like, bro, go get the freak. Go get the guy that can do some freakish things for you. And what do you know? He's actually a special talent, like especially at tight end. Like tight end, you can find those guys. And I think they lean a little too heavy on like Charlie Warner. When he was coming out, it was very clear like this is a blocking tight end, and he can give you he'll catch a few passes, but he was a blocking tight end type guy, right? Like
that was kind of what George Kittle was. So I think they tried to see if lightning would strike twice in that regard. A guy who was like blocked first, blocked well, but had some athleticism. Maybe there's more maybe there's more to his receiving game in the NFL once we coach him up and give him the opportunity and just throw more balls his way. Happened with Kittle, 2017 draft. Didn't quite turn out the same way with Charlie Warner, but this draft class is the best since 2017. And I think it's the perfect opportunity to strike again at tight end and see if you can find one of those guys in the mid rounds. And there's going to be talent at tight end from round 3, probably all the way through round 7, where the 49ers are drafting. By the way, so I gave you a couple of names at tight end. Here's a name I gave you a couple of names at linebacker. Here's a name at tight end to look out for. He might be there in the 7th round. I have no idea how long he's going to go, but the 49ers did a lot of work at Toledo when they drafted Womack. There's a tight end by the name of Turner out of Toledo. Big tight end, athleticism. Go watch him. Got a feeling about him as a late round guy for the 49ers. But it's another draft where I think a lot of talent at the top could push some players down to where the 49ers are drafting. Maybe they find themselves another George Kittle in the mid round. So tight end, clearly, I think in the top 5 of needs. And like I said, with linebacker, be surprised if the 49ers don't come out of the draft with a tight end. Not exactly sure where that is, where need will meet value in the draft for the 49ers at tight end. But we got to talk about one more position group if we're putting together our top 5. So right now we've got offensive tackle, DB, linebacker, and tight end. Would that be the order for you, or tight end ahead of linebacker?
Edge, I think tight end. I would say tight end ahead of linebacker.
So hold on, I forgot about edge. So it's offensive tackle, edge, Croc, or DB?
No, I don't think edge.
Not edge at all?
Yeah, and I don't think edge because, again, I believe in player development. So okay. I believe in, like, you got to see it with Drake Jackson, but I'm not just going to, like, hey, I got to, unless you're drafting in the 1st round or you're going to sign this big time guy at edge, like, all right, cool. But if you're just going to throw bodies at a position, which they're likely going to do from here on out, and with no high draft picks, I don't think you're going to just find somebody that's just, oh man, like, this guy's guaranteed to play over Drake Jackson.
Right. No, you're just adding competition to the room. But right now, there's 3 ends on the team that I think are guaranteed a roster spot. One of them's on a 1-year deal. So there's room for an end there. And so I think edge is top 3 for me. And it's just such a valuable position. And you've got to kind of draft those guys when they're there for you on the board. Maybe you could take some swings. Maybe it'll be more of a developmental type, but I think edge is still a need. So 1 offensive tackle, 2 DB, 3 edge, 4. So is it linebacker or tight end first?
Tight end.
Tight end 4, linebacker 5.
Do you like any tight end after George Kittle? Like, where it's like, I like this guy.
You should. It's such a, and we saw the 49ers do it last offseason.
And Kittle misses games.
If all you need is a second tight end, you should be able to get that guy in June if you need to. So it's like, yes, it's a need, but it's also like, how many resources are you going to put into the backup tight end? You know what I mean? Like, they're important and they need to be on the field, but it's behind a lot of stuff for me.
I wouldn't look at it as
I'm drafting and it's a tie. If it's a tie between an edge and a tight end who's going to be a backup, I'm going to take the edge. If it's a tie between a wide receiver and a tight end who's a backup tight end, I'm going to take the wide receiver. So, like, it's going to lose a tie to a lot of positions if you're just drafting for a backup tight end. It's important, but you can find a veteran player that can play for you there at that position. So that's why it's hard for me to put that super high, even though I think the 49ers are going to attack that, and they need to attack it in the draft. And maybe
I wouldn't look at it as drafting a tight end 2, a backup tight end, right? I wouldn't look at it like, oh, I want a backup tight end. I look at it as, can I have somebody that complements George Kittle and enhances some of the things that we want to do with 2 tight end sets? Because essentially, almost like a nickel back, it's almost like a starting position, especially in an offense that uses a lot of that type of stuff, right? Like they want to do 2 tight end stuff. Like when Jordan Matthews was on the 49ers, like they wanted to do Jordan Matthews and George Kittle things on the field at the same time. Unfortunately, they just both kept getting hurt either at the same time or like one guy's hurt and then the other guy can play. So that was more the issue. But I think you would like to have it to where, man, we got George Kittle and then this other guy who can like really play.
Yeah, and when George Kittle comes out, that tight end 2 becomes tight end 1. Right. And look, hey, let's play this out. What if the 49ers got better tight end 2 play on one specific play this season against the Philadelphia Eagles? Do they win the Super Bowl with a better tight end 2? Right?
They probably win the Super Bowl.
So maybe tight end 2 is that important, especially if Kyle Shanahan's going to use his tight end 2 to block stud edge rushers. Okay. All right. So tight end 2, 4, linebacker 5. So that's our top 5. Offensive tackle. Already forgot. DB. Yeah, that could be corner or safety. So it's kind of like 2 and 1 there. It could be both. Edge, tight end, linebacker. Niners don't have a kicker yet. So what do you do with kicker? Is that just like find a kicker when you can? Or does kicker jump up to the top of the list because they don't have one? Like all the other spots, they got starters. They don't have a starting kicker.
You need a kicker. And again, we've seen just these old veteran kickers that come to the 49ers and they do well. We saw with Nedney. We saw with Akers. We saw with Robbie Gould. Can they strike gold again and get an old aging guy who's just a good kicker and have him compete with the late round pick?
A great stat here from our buddy Jordan Elliott at Splash Cousin on Twitter, does work with Niners Nation. There have been 17 kickers selected in the NFL draft over the last 10 seasons. 17 kickers. Only 1 got a second contract from the team that drafted them.
Scary.
So if kickers a need.
Well, not scary. Just don't draft them.
Yeah, I mean, and you can, but don't be spending one of those 3rd round picks on a kicker, and like draft a kicker to compete with the guy that you signed in free agency.
Yeah.
That is a lot cheaper apparently than Robbie Gould, if that's the way you have to go, or just bring Gould back. But draft a guy and see if he is a guy. Because you shouldn't just give up on it, but don't go crazy. But I have a feeling the 49ers will be like, just like they did with punter. Well, we're going in the draft. We need this. So we're going to force it, sooner than we probably should. And I have a feeling the Niners might do that. But I would put kicker at 6, and I would hope that they have a veteran kicker in before the draft so they don't have to force that need higher than 6 and ahead of those other needs on the list for the 49ers. So that's where I put it.
Sometimes they just want their guy. I do want to answer this question from our guy, Eric Sully, real quick. Eric with a K. And he says, Croc, what are your key traits you look for in corners? And I think for me, right, the first thing is I want to see how fluid of an athlete they are. Like the feet, because that can tell me where I could play you. Whether it's on the outside, can you play in the slot? Like, do you have more versatility? Because it's just fluid, change of direction, good hips. And then the second thing I look for right away, man, you got to have that top end speed. Can you have that top end speed? And then the third thing, which probably should be higher, I guess, but it's kind of hard when you're kind of prioritizing it, but you got to be able to play smart. Things happen so quick. Every motion changes some of your responsibilities. So you got to be able to read and react extremely fast. And then after that, I'd probably say physicality, and not just in the sense of just tackling, but, getting off blocks, so shedding those blocks, guys trying to intimidate you at the receiver position. How do you handle that? Really kind of, you're going to get bombed on. It's going to happen. Are you able to just move on to the next play? That part of it as well. But off top, I mean, the first thing I look for when I'm identifying, like, let's say a cornerback prospect, I'm looking at, man, how fluid is he? What do those feet look like? What does change of direction look like? And then I'm looking at, man, can he run with the guys on a vertical push, right? Like, what is it? Is he fighting? Is he trying hard to keep up, or is it really effortless? And then that's, I'd say like technique is probably one of the last things I look at, or I like kind of rank in this thing, because I can teach that. But some of the other things you kind of just either have this innate ability to do it or you don't.
Confidence is so big in that, right? Yeah. Because when you see a corner that knows he can run with a guy, they play a little different, or they know they can trust their technique. Even they play a little different, and you can kind of see it with the confidence in how they play and how they go about covering a receiver and understanding the angles and understanding where they need to be. And I don't know if it's an innate thing or it's something you can teach, but all the great corners are always super confident all the time.
Some guys have this like great feel for it. Oh, you got to trash talk, man. You got to trash talk. I love that. I love that. That's people get on me like, Croc, why are you always talking about the Warriors, man? Lakers, blah, blah. No, like, dude, I'm a cornerback. Like, I was born to talk trash.
That's fantastic. Oh, thank you, everybody, for jumping in on this Locked On 49ers live edition, updating team needs here as we've hit the the biggest portion of free agency. It's wild how early it happens. We're only a day into the new league year, and it feels like so much has been done already for every team in the NFL over the course of this week. Croc and I will, of course, be back with you tomorrow. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, the hosts of Locked On Dolphins and Locked On Bills, respectively, formerly of the Draft Network. They know their stuff when it comes to prospects and scouting, and they'll be talking about free agency and the draft and all the team building that goes on in the NFL every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Check it out on YouTube and everywhere you find your podcast. Make sure you're also subscribed up to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show on the new YouTube channel for Peacock and Williamson as well. And of course, Croc and I will be back with you next week, and we'll see if there's some new signings, see if the 49ers have any more tricks up their sleeves and some more surprising ways to make a splash this offseason and digging into more draft prospects as well, all offseason long, right here, Locked On 49ers.